class. Today we were moving on to talk about this book. So we're going to be talking about things like celebrity culture, the relationship between celebrities and their fans, the relationship between media companies and how they promote celebrities and scandal. We're going to look at some of the things that Dr. Drew and Mark Young did here. I find one of the interesting things is because Dr. Drew is so famous, I mean, Dr. Young's the one that did most of the analysis, but they put Dr. Drew at the top in big letters. Because obviously what I find interesting somewhat about his book is that, is Dr. Drew a celebrity? He is, isn't he? He's very well known. Now, he's not a tradition, he's like C. Everett Koop or something. Or, if you guys know this, Dr. Sanjay Gupta, that guy, I know some of you like Dr. Oz, but a lot of people think he's a quack, or just an oddball. I mean, I haven't seen enough of him to give an opinion, but he similar to that vein. That this is not Paris Hilton, this is not a politician, this is not an entertainer, this is not a singer, and Dr. Drew is not trying to put on some false front as Lady Gaga or some other person. And I do believe, I'll look into this in a little more detail, I do believe he did suffer at least from alcoholism at some point during his life. I'm not sure about drug addiction. Most addicts will tell you, because I've worked with these people and interviewed them, I teach classes on social alcoholism and drug abuse, and I have many of these people in my family, will tell you they're not going to listen to anyone who hasn't had this happen to them. What is it? Who do you think an addict is not going to listen to?
A person who's never been addicted.
That's right. Why would I listen to somebody? I don't care. And again, this is not my opinion. I'm just giving the opinion of the attitude of many addicts that why should I listen to you? Even with all this scientific evidence, big deal you studied science. I can study guinea pigs. It doesn't turn me into one, does it? It doesn't help me understand their mindset necessarily. Other people would argue, hey, you know what? Maybe it's better people, you have a combination of people who don't have addictions and did have addictions. Because the problem is, what's one of the central problems with stopping addictions? Especially for heroin and cocaine and alcohol. What happens? What stops somebody from getting better?
Relapse.
Right. And don't you think that Dr. Drew gets the itch sometimes, and one of the issues like in drug addiction and alcoholism clinics is sometimes talking about drugs and when you got high and how it made you feel doesn't make you want to stop doing drugs. Just like watching Half-Baked doesn't make people want to go, you know what, I'm never going to smoke pot again. Or watching Superbad goes, oh, I'm never going to drink again. Okay? But you know, in general, you have this attitude, I think, that most people would want somebody who's had some of these issues. And not only some of these issues with substance abuse, but some of the other developmental issues that he discusses. So, put the attendance sheet out here. So a couple of the things that we're going to be talking about are things like the mirror effect. Is what he calls it. It's also known and this is going to be coupled with studies on the media monopoly and elements of the cultivation theory, or at the very minimum also the interpretation model. And also on top of these two things that are in the book, so this is part of your quiz for today. What instrument did Dr. Young and Dr. Drew use, and they gave it to celebrities to indicate that there might be an issue with celebrity behavior and it's the origins of some of the behavior, like Lindsay Lohan's behavior?
Like a narcissism test?
Right, it was the Narcissistic Personality Inventory. So what is narcissism, and why does Drew say that celebrities are narcissistic? What origins does he give to this behavior? And what does he say that it's causing in non-celebrities' behavior? So let's talk about what does he say are the origins of narcissistic behavior in celebrities? It's very similar to what other people are. Some of you in psychology should know this. Yeah.
With a troubled childhood?
Right, that's one of them, is this element of shame that comes from being abused. Many times narcissistic people use this as a defense mechanism. Who are some of the celebrities that they talked about in chapter 1 and described their lives? Yes?
Paris Hilton, Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan.
And what I find interesting, let's take Paris Hilton for a minute. One of the other celebrities they mentioned was Marilyn Monroe. What was Marilyn Monroe's life like in childhood? Somebody else, yeah.
She grew up without a dad, and she kept living in other people's houses. And I think her mom had a mental disorder or something.
She was also sexually abused as a child. She started using drugs very early on and alcohol. The abuse continued. This is why, and I know some of you are Democrats and you love this person, and some of you probably have pictures of this person in your house. But do you think John Kennedy's behavior made Marilyn Monroe's psychology better, or made it worse? Because he was abusing her. And you heard the story of him, if you've ever seen the famous footage of her singing Happy Birthday to the president, why his wife is sitting right next to him. And supposedly she had a fever and was on prescription medication, all kinds of stuff. What about Elvis? What kind of lifestyle and background did he have?
Wasn't he surrounded by enablers?
To some extent, and even in his early childhood, you could say he didn't live the ideal life. I think one issue that I have with Dr. Pinsky, and I'd like to hear your guys' opinion on this, is he talks about people like Paris Hilton. Did Paris Hilton have a troubled childhood? Did Britney Spears have a troubled childhood? Probably didn't have a normal childhood. Child stars, I think, are a different subject matter, I think. But if you take a look at, people like Tom Cruise has an 8th grade education. Many of these people, I think there's probably maybe 1% of Hollywood stars have a college degree. Mel Gibson doesn't have a college degree. Name a celebrity. Kevin Costner doesn't have a college degree. Brad Pitt does, by the way, from I think Wichita State or something, in acting.
Yeah.
Yes, she has a degree from Princeton. Is it? I
Yeah.
thought look that up. Look that up for me.
No, because she has a rock. Have you ever heard of that? From Saturday Night
Oh, okay.
Live?
All right, I trust you. I can. You know who it was? Jodie Foster went to Princeton, I think. So, anyway, Mayim Bialik has a PhD in neuroscience and now appears on Big Bang Theory as a neuroscientist. Quite a stretch for Blossom, if you know. She was Blossom when she was younger. But in general, what we're talking about here, he centers this around a few things. One of them certainly is emotional damage and/or immaturity. And one of the things I had you read for today was that narcissism, that we're going to get more into the details of what narcissism is specifically, but narcissism is an element of a sense of self-privilege, self-centeredness, that you need to be constant attention. So part of this is constantly attention grabbing. And what we really have here is an external focus of self-esteem, meaning that celebrities or people that have the personality makeup of celebrities or suffer from narcissistic personality disorder have an issue with they can't just be happy that they're happy with themselves. It reminds me of, if you've ever seen Death of a Salesman or if you've seen The Office, Michael on The Office has to be liked. He has to be friends with his workers. He had a lot of issues in his childhood. If you see the play, Arthur Miller's play Death of a Salesman, which by the way is on Broadway right now, Willie thinks that by being liked and being impressive that he can succeed in business, not understanding that there's more to business than just looking good or being interesting or funny. And for celebrities, A lot of them learn very early on that they can make a lot of the negative feelings about certain things that happened in the past go away by being on stage, and for two things. One, when you're on stage, are you who you are in real life? Especially for actors, this is appealing. I don't think Lady Gaga did not have a twisted childhood. It might not have been ideal, but show me somebody whose childhood is ideal, and I'll show you the most successful person on earth, or one of them, or something. A well-adjusted person at the very minimum. So people like Lady Gaga play these games with their images, or Marilyn Manson wears this weird, despicable clothing and offensive stuff to cause controversy, or Madonna does this or that. And it's really an attempt to distance themselves from... Lady Gaga does not want people to call her Stephanie. That Stephanie doesn't exist anymore. Just like, remember when Prince changed his name to a symbol? You know, I mean, how more pretentious can you get? And it was an unpronounceable symbol. And then he started to become known as the artist formerly known as Prince. And then he was the artist, and then he went back to Prince. And it's like, what? It's like, what did Ron Artest change his name to?
Meta World Peace.
Right. And he did that partly to get it, and Ocho Cinco did that stuff with his name. So celebrities, and here's the rub though. Does everybody who watches these celebrities do these outrageous things and play on stage? And the other part is, when they're on stage or they're performing, and either as themselves or somebody else, they're getting adulation for something that they are doing that is over and beyond just who they are as a human being. And I think Drew is certainly making the case that celebrities long for this at a much higher level than most average people do. But here's the thing. He's also suggesting two things. One, that the media monopoly and the competition in the media field has created sort of a tabloidization of the media. That CNN will talk about Anna Nicole Smith, even though they shouldn't probably be doing that. Should that? I mean, should that be their number one topic of the day? I mean, I think, look, you can throw a dart on a newspaper and find a more interesting story than that. Even a cat in a tree is probably... I mean, not to say that her death was insignificant, because it wasn't for the people involved. But the amount of coverage was out of proportion. And and people say, well, we're going to punish these media companies for showing this stuff repeatedly. And Drew's also suggesting that celebrities, because there are more celebrities, so there's more competition, are engaging in sort of an arms race of who can be the most ridiculous, who can go to rehab the most, who can do the most drugs at one time, who can almost die 3 or 4 times. And a lot of them do die. I mean, I'm doing a long-term qualitative analysis on the impact of people who start acting before the age of 18. And I'm going to include things like, did they have a drug addiction problem? What age did they die? How many divorces did they have? Did they have any arrests? Did they do any successful work after they turned 18? These types of things. And here's the other aspect that Drew is talking about. Is he saying the American people are disgusted by the behavior of celebrities? What's he saying? At least that some people...
Fascinated by it?
That at least a certain percentage of people. And Drew would probably say almost all of America is like this. And he would divide sort of people into a couple groups here. He would say, there's people who are celebrity obsessed, and they eat this stuff up. And these are probably the most dangerous people for this mirror effect, or what we call the social learning theory, of that people, if they see other people they identify with doing something or engaging in a certain behavior that either they're already doing or thinking about doing, they're much more likely to do it. And what he's saying here is that young people are absorbing these narcissistic types of behavior that celebrities are engaging in. And he's saying that, look, some people eating that up and they're following it and they're doing, the things that celebrities are doing. He would probably put another group in sort of a category of they pay attention to celebrities, but they don't really, it's not their whole life. They certainly wouldn't look at, they would be more apt to look at Charlie Sheen and go, yeah, I like Charlie, and that's funny, but look, that's really sad too. That they're not going down this road. And then there's a third category that can't stand celebrities, celebrity culture. They don't like the entertainment industry. They think it's fake. And they watch stuff like the Anna Nicole Smith death thing, or stuff like Whitney Houston, and they're disgusted by it, and they're concerned about it, and they're concerned that children are being impacted by it, and if they're parents, they're certainly concerned, and if they're media people, some of them want to see this stuff being taken off. Mika Brzezinski, who I think she still is an anchor on MSNBC, she got so tired of the stories that they were doing on Paris Hilton. I think she's a smoker. She was on air and they handed her a piece of paper, like a breaking news story about Paris Hilton getting out of jail or something dumb. That, in her opinion, was dumb. And she said, "Oh, that's enough of these Paris Hilton stories." And she took a lighter out of her pocket and she burned the story on the air. And her colleague was like, "Mika, don't..." And give you a little bit of a background on Mika. Her father was a national security advisor under Jimmy Carter. I would assume that this is not somebody who was worried about being homeless if she lost her job. It's a beautiful thing to have that type of power to really express your displeasure at something from a principled perspective and not worry about the financial damage. And that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump runs his mouth. He thinks he's right, and nobody's big and bad enough to stop him. And I don't think nobody's ever going to stop him until they take his money away, and then it's just going to be Donald at the laundromat running his mouth at people. So probably getting beat up. Anyway. Alright, so let's so we talked about Mark Young, we talked about the questionnaires. Let me read a little bit from the book here. This is on page 12 to 14. This talks about their methodology. Remember one of the things in sociology that we're interested in. You have to devise techniques and methods to study what you're looking at. And one of the unique things about Dr. Drew's books is he got a certain set of people that normally never would allow, and I don't know how, I guess he kept it anonymous, but if I'm Tom Cruise or any of these people that Nicole Richie or any of these people that he had on Loveline and all these other shows, I would not want this information as a whole or individually to get out. This is not a good look for a lot of celebrities or just the concept of a celebrity. But again, it's interesting that he was able to get celebrities who are normally very guarded, although that they still like to promote themselves, to take a narcissistic personality inventory and a questionnaire and answer somewhat honestly, it appears. So on page 12, it says, as an educator and a doctor respectively, and as parents ourselves, Mark and I were concerned about how the current entertainment landscape might affect our children. The more we talked about it, the more we felt we needed to analyze these troubling aspects of celebrity culture and consider what society could do to guard against their harmful influence. My training leads me to evaluate a patient's symptoms in detail before I arrive at a diagnosis. So what's interesting here is the combination of psychiatric science, addiction science. Dr. Drew is a trained, essentially a medical doctor. He's a psychiatrist. I believe he's a psychiatrist. Does it say anything? Let's see what degree he actually has. It doesn't say, I mean, he does have a doctorate. It doesn't say what it is. And Dr. Mark Young is a social scientist who focuses on media studies and how it intersects with people. So what you have is somebody from the medical community and somebody from the psychological medical community that looks at things like narcissistic personality disorder, and somebody from my field that looks at survey data and social factors, sociological concepts, and things like that. Yes?
It says it in the front.
What does it say?
He's a board certified in internal and addiction medicine.
So there he does have essentially does have an MD. Does it say he has a psychiatric degree?
No.
Well, when you're an addiction specialist, you certainly are well familiar with psychological literature, and if you're not going to get a lot of customers. And what I find interesting is Dr. Drew initially. Does anybody remember some of the initial instances that brought him to the conclusion that there was something wrong with celebrities? They came into his addiction treatment center. What did they want?
Special treatment? They wanted
Britney Spears wanted a whole wing to herself. And part of the problem with, and he mentioned it, part of the problem with addiction is the sense of entitlement, or that I deserve to do this, or that I'm special and I can get away with doing coke. That's just who I am. I'm a celebrity. Come on, all celebrities do coke. And in order for people to get better, you have to break that down. And one of the things addicts have to do is to admit that they have no control over their addiction. Does that sound like something that narcissistic people like to admit, that they have no control? Right? And that this thing has me? Because when you're special and talented and you're brilliant, you don't want to believe this kind of stuff. That's why Celebrity Rehab is such a bizarre show. We will watch several episodes of that show. And part of it, what's one of the major problems with Celebrity Rehab? Why do you think a lot of people really don't get better on that show? Why are they really on that show?
To be on television.
Yeah. I mean, seriously. Do you really think Steve-O got better? Wasn't he on that show? Sylvester Stallone's ex-wife, the blonde, was on that show. One of the MMA fighters, I think, was on that show or something like that. UFC champion. The guy who played Kaniki in Grease. You ever seen? He was on that. He was when they showed him. When they showed him, the one guy, the UFC champion, came in. He was like, "Hey man, this is so and so." He's like, "How you doing, man?" He was puking in a trash can while he was there. A whole bunch of people have gone through this. I love the fact that one of the counselors at one point was Gary Busey. I don't want to be counseled by Gary Busey. That guy's an oddball. Anyway. The more we talked about it, the more we felt the need to analyze these troubling aspects of celebrity and consider what society... Anyway, I just read that. As a social scientist, Mark studies research data in much the same way, identifying and interpreting patterns that point to new conclusions. When I told Mark that I saw the growth of celebrity narcissistic behavior as an increasingly troubling cultural virus, another theory that they're really talking about is what... When he says social virus. We'll go over all these theories in detail. I just want to introduce you to these concepts here. Social contagion theory. Harvard scientists did a study about 4 years ago where they looked at if somebody goes on a diet or loses weight, what impact does that have on people's primary and secondary social groups? And one of the things they found is that when somebody goes on a diet or loses weight or gains weight, the other people around them, it contagiously affects their behavior. They see the other person losing weight. Maybe somebody texts them, "Hey, I lost 2 pounds this week," and maybe they get envious or jealous. One of the interesting things they found that it didn't matter whether somebody was in California and somebody else was in Florida, or somebody was right next door to each other, that it impacted people. And if you just look at it from a fundamental standpoint, this is a pretty... I wouldn't even say this is a theory anymore. This is really the law of social contagion. I mean, come on. Name something that you do, language, clothing, identity, that's not connected to what other people are doing. It's like the ripple in the pond effect. You can't throw a rock in, and you can't do anything without it spiraling out. Okay? Now, some people in your lives have more influence than others. Right? Peer groups, parents, things like that, which can prevent bad things like narcissistic personality disorder from infecting people. But in general, if you think about it, fashion spreads essentially through social contagion. How about new music? New music doesn't get played on the radio, so how do people know about bands? Somebody goes, here, listen to this. Oh, I just got this great song. Oh, you should have heard this thing on YouTube. Look at, here. Justin Bieber loves this theory. Doesn't he? His whole career is based upon this reality. And the internet. And with the internet, social contagion has a whole new thing to spread through. It's like a super virus now. It can't be stopped. And some of the things that get popular on YouTube should tell you about human behavior and human interest on some levels. Like the lady who couldn't figure out what miles per hour and stuff were, that was like a 2 million. Or David after the dentist. Have you seen this? Some kid. The way some people view this is that this is a young person's father who is, instead of sympathizing and comforting his son while he's having this drug experience, is making fun of him and filming it. And this kid got famous. He was on talk shows and stuff. Well, I hope that he doesn't go down the road of drug addiction or something, because his dad was making it out to be funny that he was whacked out on, I don't know what it was, Novocaine, nitrous oxide. They don't give nitrous oxide to kids, do they? I know. I mean, there are people who've taken this at raves and have died because their lungs froze. So I would assume it'd be and if you know, Novocaine messes your head up. Like, you don't feel right for a long time, especially when you're a kid. And instead of sympathizing, and he was sort of saying, it'll be okay, he was laughing at this young kid, his own son. And that made the rounds. Or the salvia videos, or the drunken, stupid games that people put on for spring break. This stuff gets very popular, or fights. You know, somebody gets into a sword fight in the street. Anyway. When I told Mark that I saw the growth of celebrity narcissism behavior as an increasingly troubled cultural virus, he suggested that we study it at the point of transmission. If I were right, if celebrities as a group do tend to suffer from unhealthy levels of narcissism that drive their worst behavior, a scientific study of celebrity personality would give us a way to confirm and quantify the theory. So what they're saying here, look, we're going to the source. Our theory is, it is the celebrities and how they grew up and how they get projected into the media that is the source of this. This is like if you were trying to figure out what was causing the Black Plague. Eventually we trace it back to rats and the fleas and stuff. So they're trying to get to the fleas. Okay, this is the fleas. We'll see if they're really right. Because the other, and we'll talk about this later, the other theory is, if celebrities are acting narcissistic, they're getting signals from who that this is appropriate. Do you think if a celebrity acted narcissistic and everybody instantaneously stopped going to the movie that a celebrity would ever act narcissistic again? So where might the narcissism be coming from? Or the
Public and their audience.
right, and the culture in general. Aren't there narcissistic elements to American culture? That we're the greatest, we're the best, number one, step out of the way, everybody's special, everybody can be the president, everybody can be famous. Celebrities didn't make that up. That's part of the American dream. There are narcissistic tendencies. I hate to put it this way. I hope I'm not offending anybody. Okay? But there are narcissistic tendencies to the American dream. Wanting to be the CEO of a company without any discernible talent. Wanting to just be famous to be famous. People spilling coffee on themselves and suing people for $4 million just because they don't want to work. People wrecking companies because they don't want to work. Like Enron. Okay? So one of the things we'll explore is Drew Pinsky right? Is the center of this reality celebrities and celebrity culture and the way media deals with them? Or are they themselves reflecting the larger culture that wants to that where individuals want to see themselves as supreme rulers of reality? I would be interested to see somebody survey the American public and ask this one simple question. There are very few people that are better than me in this country. How many people do you think would answer that question? No. Or that there are, most people in this country are more talented and smarter than I am. How many people do you think would answer yes to that question? I'm not really special at all. How many people would answer yes to that question? And I'm not saying that it makes you a horrible person just because you've been told these things or you believe these things. But here's the issue. Narcissism is an excess of this. It's all right to think you're special. Just like snowflakes are unique. But aren't they all made of water? And in the end, aren't we all human beings? Regardless if you're from India or you're from Canada or you're from Thailand or wherever. And that by projecting an extreme amount of self-love or self-promotion, that harms the social structure. That's certainly one of the things that Dr. Drew and Dr. Young get into. I don't know, I'd like to hear, as we go along and today, more about what you think about this.
Do you know what questions they ask in the test that you have?
I can get you a copy. They ask questions similar to that. They ask things like, I feel I am entitled to anything, or I feel I should be the center of attention all the time, or people should lean to my belief system, or people don't like me because I'm always right, or because I'm too good looking. That kind of stuff. I'm more talented than the average person. That kind of stuff. The law doesn't apply to me. Questions like that. And again, if you look at celebrities, do a lot of celebrities think the law doesn't apply to them? I mean, Charlie Sheen wrecked a hotel room at the Plaza. He's beat 2 of his wives. He's had his kids taken away by the police. He repeatedly does drugs, right? And on top of it, do the police arrest him really? No. I mean, I think that's a terrible tragedy. That many celebrities do horrible things. Dante Stallworth ran over and killed somebody and did 30 days. I don't even think he did 30 days. I think it was 28 days. If that was you or I, or even if you just wrecked the... What do you think would happen to you if you stayed a night at the plaza and you wrecked the joint in a drug-fueled rage? What do you think would happen to you? You're going to jail and you're not getting out on bail. And the plaza is going to charge you 5 times as much damage that you did. And you're never going to be able to go to a high-scale, upscale hotel again. Do you think that they banned Charlie Sheen from going to Aspen and places like that?
They didn't even bail him from the plaza.
Yeah, I mean, that's the... I mean, the Four Seasons would be like, Mr. Sheen, come over here, you can wreck our room. And they put a sign on the door, the Charlie Sheen room, or something like that. So you look for cocaine under the seat cushion, or the couch cushion. Anyway, so let me continue though, and we'll talk a little bit about this narcissistic personality disorder. In reviewing research on celebrity, neither of us could find a single systematic scientific analysis of celebrity personality. So they're saying, look, nobody's did the research, here we're going to do it. As far as we could tell, no one had undertaken to collect data from celebrities, and no empirical studies of their personality traits or behavior had ever been published. There's a good reason for that. The barrier wall of fame, of course, would have blocked most curious researchers from attempting such a study. So here's Drew Pinsky's connections playing into his ability to get access. However, my work in radio and television and Mark's network of connections in the entertainment industry gave us access to stars of all kinds. So not just actors or singers, all types of celebrities. So I think that's a crucial element. That's a very broad swath of people, including people who have no discernible talent, like Paris Hilton, who he says is famous for being famous. Some people would say, oh, she's a fragrance billionaire, and she's a model, and she's an actress and a singer, and come on. Yeah, and J-Lo's a singer too. Anyway. They can make anybody sound good in the studio. They just turn dials. I mean, do you really think NSYNC sounds like that? You think Britney Spears sounds like that? I mean, I hand it to Miley Cyrus. I think she goes out there without those voice effects. Sounds terrible, too. Anyway. It may seem surprising, and people are still willing to wait for 5 hours in the rain for a ticket. But she's like Apple, or was. But when we began approaching celebrities about participating in the study of narcissism and celebrity, most of them were eager to participate. Over the course of approximately 2 years, we administered a well-known psychological survey tool called the Narcissistic Personality Inventory to 200 celebrities from all fields of entertainment. They're telling you what they did, how many people they interviewed. The NPI assesses the scale of narcissism for a respondent based on their answers to 40 questions tailored to measure levels of specific narcissistic traits. Most of the celebrities we surveyed have been guests on Loveline, comedians, actors, musicians, reality TV participants. I think that's a curious one, because those are traditional celebrities. Some of them were considered A-list, some B-list, or C-list. That's the reality TV people. But they were all famous enough to feature regularly in the tabloids, on entertainment news shows, and on internet gossip sites. We also surveyed a group of NBA students. Now they're comparing it to non-celebrities, so this is sort of your control group. But not a traditional control group, because NBA, what Dr. Drew and Dr. Young are suggesting is that people who have MBAs probably suffer from some mild form of narcissism, because a business person has to be very confident, and they have to believe in themselves, and they have to think that they know better than other people, which are things that lead into narcissism. I think one of the most alluring aspects of narcissism, and one of the most difficult aspects of narcissism for celebrities to deal with, is the fact that many of them are really talented. Christina Aguilera has an amazing voice. Michael Jordan is the greatest basketball player to have set foot on this earth. Okay? He feels he has a right to be arrogant. Tiger Woods feels he has a right to be narcissistic. Charlie Sheen, I'm not sure what talent he has other than doing coke. I mean, he does have some... I mean, name something where Charlie Sheen should have been nominated for an Academy Award. At least Robert Downey Jr. did Chaplin. You know, Charlie Sheen is a bit of a B-list star. I mean, 2.5 Men. So, you know, he's sort of funny in that show. I think they won an Emmy or something like that. But he's not tearing the world up. This is not Jimmy Stewart or Cary Grant or James Cagney or or even Tom Hanks, for that matter. So anyway, but I think it's interesting here is what we call is situationally acquired narcissistic personality disorder is where, look, I'm Steve Jobs. I am better than everybody. I proved it. I'm the President of the United States. I am better than everybody. I'm the head of Microsoft. I am better than everybody. Okay? Or whatever it is. I'm the head of the CIA. You think the head of the CIA thinks anybody is better than him? I think that's one of the qualifications for the job. Anyway. Or especially like athletes. I don't think Tom Brady is narcissistic, but he could easily be so, couldn't he? Here's my rings. What's going on? See all three of them? There's three. 1, 2, 3. Okay. The Giants fans be like, yeah, but you're 0-2, dude. The last two. So, anyway. Eli could be arrogant now. Remember when Eli said that? That he was an elite quarterback? Those of you who don't listen to sports radio. Eli, early in the season, before he won the Super Bowl, was asked whether or not he was an elite quarterback. And he said, yes, I am. And people said, oh my God, what a ridiculous statement. Till he did that thing again. So anyway. Since previous studies had found links between MBA students' aspirations to corporate leadership and the traits of narcissism, we expected that our study would allow us to place the general population, MBA students, and celebrities all on the sliding scale of narcissism. The results of our study, published in the October 2006 edition of the Journal of Research and Personality, confirmed our instinct. They showed that narcissism is not a byproduct of celebrity, but a primary motivating force that drives people to become celebrities. So they are suggesting that it exists in the general population first as an impetus both for individuals to behave in a certain manner, but also people who have certain talents or certain aspirations to get into the celebrity world. Like, let's take Kim Kardashian. Did she need to be famous and be on a reality show to have a comfortable life? Who's her stepdad? Who's done what? Won like 10 billion gold medals. He was actually for some reason, the person who's told the NASCAR drivers to start their engine a couple weeks ago. I'm not sure what was going on there. And her real dad was, is his name Robert Kardashian? He was one of the most famous and wealthy defense attorneys in the entire world. Not just the United States. I mean, people in Argentina knew about this guy. I mean, seriously. And she could have sat comfortably on the money, right? She could have, or why didn't she just go to college and study something, or catch butterfly? I don't know. Tend a garden, something other than getting attention. And what was her first claim to fame? Right. Similarly with Paris Hilton, but Paris was already a model at the time when the tape came out, I believe, wasn't she? So anyway. But why? What Drew and Mark Young are trying to describe is why somebody like Kim Kardashian would bother, right? She's attractive anyway. She had lots of money. She could have been comfortable her whole life. And if I ever meet Kim, I might tell her that. Have you ever examined what your life was like before you got famous and what it's like now? Is this really adding value to your life? And I think if she sat down and honestly appraised it, she might come to the conclusion that, hey, I was better off when nobody knew who I was. Because before she was just, when she went to the grocery store, she was just some attractive woman at the grocery store. Now she's Kim Kardashian, and when she goes to, can she go to the grocery store? Can she just go to the movies and hang out with her friends? To the bar? Who shows up? Right, and fans. Now with texting and stuff, people just go, oh, hey, Kim Kardashian's at this club. Right? Maybe that's why Plaxico had the gun. Who knows? Crazy fans. It's not good to shoot yourself in the leg. A lot worse could happen. But anyway. This study, along with additional previously unpublished research, original interviews, and a detailed review of the entertainment press, gave us a springboard to continue our analysis of celebrity narcissism and its effects on the vulnerable and increasingly wide audience and influence. This book is the result. The prospect of narcissism playing an increasingly dominant role in our culture is a sobering one. People with narcissistic personality disorder have difficulty maintaining relationships. So here is the what is at stake as far as people's interpersonal relationships and for society. They have difficulty maintaining relationships. So what do you think that narcissism would be correlated with?
Like the high divorce rate.
Right, that's what you would assume. And what I find interesting in this, and if I ever meet Dr. Drew and Dr. Pinsky and Dr. Young, I'm going to say this to them, that they need to look more at a reciprocal relationship. The divorce rate jumped up a lot, got into the 40 percentile rate well before the United States was obsessed with celebrities. In the late 60s is when it went up. And what did Dr. Drew call the 1970s, and that other people have called it, that really kind of altered the culture's perspective about, like for example, in the 60s, a lot of people were focused on social change, about being in groups, being a part of something larger than themselves. What happened in the 70s when a lot of that stuff sort of died out? What did people start focusing on then?
Themselves.
Right, and pleasure too. That if it feels good, do it. Who gives a damn what happens tomorrow? It really is sort of the Tiger Woods thing that Tiger felt, and we'll talk about Tiger. If you listen to his apology, or whatever that was, I'm not sure it was an apology more than a threat to stay away from his children. He said, he said, I worked hard when I was younger, both in college and he won 14 majors. And he was married, had kids, and he said he felt he deserved to take advantage of the temptations in front of him. And that is the exact statement that somebody in the 70s would have said. Whereas people, here's one of the differences. Where people would use drugs in the 60s to do what? What was the goal? Just to get wasted?
They thought like acid would enlighten them.
Right, and you expand your mind. That was Timothy Leary's thing. Or to commune with people. You smoke pot and you talk, oh man, isn't the Vietnam War dumb? That kind of stuff. Right? You're teaching each other, and you're communing. Even with alcohol, people would share the wine bottle and stuff like that. In the 70s, it became, I just want to get wasted, go to the bar, and have a one-night stand, and then do it the next day. If you've ever seen, those of you who've seen the film Dazed and Confused, what was the point of them getting high and getting drunk? So they could see God? Yeah, it was just to get wasted. It was getting high was an end in and of itself. Whereas, self-promotion became an in and of itself, and people became very self-oriented, and that's when the divorce rate really, really shot up. People would say stuff like this: "I'm going through a selfish phase." That's why I cheated on you, Marge. I was going through a selfish phase. I need to do what's best for me. Don't you want me to be happy? And every other word is I, me, mine, mine. And Dr. Drew and Mark Young and other social critics and social scientists will tell you that it's probably worse now than it was in the 70s. And if you want more proof of that, there's a book by Gene Twenge and Keith Campbell called The Narcissism Epidemic, where they suggested that one of the reasons why the divorce rate is so high is that people are so fickle, and it's like a kid with new toys. What happens when a kid gets new toys? Sometimes. What do?
You know, the time for a little bit and then they'll throw it aside.
Yeah, sometimes they'll break them. Right? And really what happens in an early marriage, the shine comes off the apple, and people start getting real. Like the mad real, it's like mad real, and people stop holding back. Like when you go on a first date, even when you get engaged, you're both playing a role, right? Remember, I want to say Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle said it's like you're meeting somebody's ambassador. You're not meeting them. Chris Rock. Is that what he said? Right, and it's absolutely, isn't that true? You take an extra shower usually. You put some cologne or something on. You wear your best clothes. You don't take somebody to McDonald's on the first date. You don't even take them to Red Lobster. You want to impress them. Maybe even take them to a Broadway show or whatever. And this goes on for a while. And people go, "Isn't so great?" And they hide things like their anger. Some people have anger issues, which is a very bad. I told my sister this when she married her husband. I said, Tara, for the first 6 or 7 months that you dated, your future husband, did he hide his anger? And then all of a sudden it started to come out little by little? And she was like, yeah. I was like, I would be concerned if you start dating a man who is all too calm, like the ocean before the storm. Like, oh, that's okay. Don't worry about that. Because it's a role. They're playing a role. That's a role. And most women, I think, know that. It's part of the game, and most men know that women play games. and things like that. So, anyway. So difficulty maintaining relationships are more likely to have mood disturbances, which can lead to things like suicide and also things like murder. Almost all serial killers suffer from narcissistic personality disorder. It is almost universal. Hitler had narcissistic personality disorder. You want to talk about somebody who was narcissistic? You couldn't tell Hitler anything. You did not argue with Hitler. You know, I think you're wrong about that. You end up in the gas chamber. And eventually people started to realize Stalin was the same way too. Okay? Nixon was the same way. I'm not saying Nixon didn't commit the crimes that Stalin and Hitler did, but given the right circumstance, he might have. Gravitate towards high drama, like yelling and stuff. Who is the supermodel who threw her cell phone at someone's head? Was that Naomi Campbell? I keep mixing her up with Tyra Banks, which is... Because Tyra, I don't think, would do something like that, but I've heard she's a bit of a diva. Supposedly Oprah's kind of a lunatic. And like, you don't... Oprah's like, you don't talk about arguing with people. You don't argue with Oprah. She says go get her coffee. You don't go, you know, that's not my job. He's like, yes, ma'am, when do you want that coffee? Should I run? Anyway. And then also a much higher likelihood of using drugs and alcohol to excess, which is one of the issues here that Drew, obviously being a specialist in this area. And what they're suggesting with this alcoholism and drug abuse thing is that it leads to what? In the general population. What's it lead to? Huh? By individual, by especially young people who are many times impressionable. So, do you think it's wrong for Lady Gaga to go out on television and say that she used drugs and that she still does and that she enjoys some of them and stuff? Is that wrong? Let me put it another way. Which one is worse? Michael Bloomberg saying that he smoked pot and loved it when he was a kid? Or Lady Gaga saying something like that? So maybe we're now comparing celebrities a little bit. Because they would not doubt the fact that there's some effect. Who do you think has more effect on young people? Michael Bloomberg saying it? Or Lady Gaga? But what's the danger of Michael Bloomberg saying it? Like, Lady Gaga is probably the issue because they're closer in age, they feel affinity, they love her music. Maybe it's not, oh, Lady Gaga does drugs, so I'll do it. What's the danger of someone like Michael Bloomberg, or David Patterson said he did coke, Obama said he did smoked weed? What's the danger of having high-profile institutional authority figures saying stuff like this? What does it do in addition to Lady Gaga?
Well, like they're really successful, so maybe
Yeah.
it looks like...
There's a big problem
Yeah.
right there. All the things your parents tell you about smoking pot starts to go up in their face. Plus, this is a man who's supposed to be enforcing the laws of the city, or like if it's the president, the laws of the federal government, admitting that when he was a kid, he repeatedly violated the law and has no remorse whatsoever about it. Jerry Brown, same way too, the current governor of California. The state troopers reported in an official subpoena that they saw him doing cocaine while he was governor. So Drew and Young here are very concerned about that this is behavior that's going to be picked up, especially with their line of work. This may sound like just another day in the tabloid life of Britney Spears, Lindsay Lohan, or Paris Hilton, but it also sounds like the story of too many regular people who call into my radio shows every day seeking advice, who offer themselves up as reality show contestants competing for their chance to perform in front of an audience, or who post shocking photos, stories, and videos of themselves on the internet. They've forgotten one element of celebrities. What also do celebrities dabble in that's probably a concern for parents of young children? It's a specific type of deviance. Some people don't find this deviant behavior. What was the subject of Dr. Drew's show?
Sexual
Yeah, sexual behavior. That it's okay to have, if you get a threesome, yeah, that's something to put on your belt, right? That's something to be proud about. That women should all engage in some kind of lesbian behavior while they're in college, or that people should go to spring break and sleep with strangers without using a condom. Very dangerous behavior, not only suggested by the celebrities' behavior themselves, but also where else do you see sex being presented in a glorified light without some of the negatives? What have we been talking about this whole time? Right. So on television, Sex and the City, there ain't no condoms on that show. Okay. I think some of you said once or twice they discussed this or something. And it was probably Sarah Jessica Parker's character, because I don't think Kim Cattrall's character cares. Do you? Does she sleep with everybody on the show? Isn't that her thing? Okay. Kim Cattrall was an actress in the early 80s, so I don't know how old she is, so it looks pretty good for probably 49 or something. Anyway, to go on here, to indicate some of the behavior that he's describing here. Let me try to find that thing where he talked about the 80s and stuff. Here we go. On the part of the bottom of page 36, Dr. Drew is saying, by the 1980s and 90s, the hippies of the 60s and the new generation of the 70s have become adults and parents without losing their if it feels good, do it mantra. In the early 80s, celebrity coverage was split between the red carpet. What came about in the early 80s that changed the media landscape, just like the internet did in basically 1993? Which you should have saw the internet in 1993. Somebody, I do appreciate your participation, but somebody else. What came along in the 1980s? Yes?
Drugs?
That was definitely a big part of it. Cocaine really hit the scene. There's no doubt about it. Pills, too. What else was kind of fueling this?
AIDS.
Well, that was a result of behavior. I'm talking about with the media specifically. What new medium came out that really altered and made it much more possible for people to see celebrities and the need to drive content? What happened? We went from 4 channels to what? Yeah, that was an enormous. I mean, it's. I think for your generation, the internet was such a big thing. It was such a game changer that we forget that the first game changer in television and media was cable, wasn't it? Now you have E-entertainment television. Now you have HBO, where movies can be shown constantly. Now you have CNN, which traditionally didn't focus on celebrities, but again started to. Look, when even back then, when CNN first started in the early or I think it was the mid 1980s, anything Elizabeth Taylor did was on that channel, you know, and she was. And those of you who don't know the history of Elizabeth Taylor, I think was married about 8 or 9 times, and she married her pool maintenance guy at one point or something. And she, at one point, was the most beautiful woman on the planet, hands down. She was like sort of the Catherine Zeta-Jones of my generation looks at that. But anyway, she was fascinating to the media, and you know, they focused on her a lot, even though she was older. And this started these again, these tabloids started to expand out. Then, essentially, once we get the internet, really, then what we have is the expansion of the ultimate universe here. But it says in the early 80s, celebrity coverage was split between the red carpet and the gutter. A celebrity scandal, which increasingly hinted at addiction. Shows like Entertainment Tonight mainly focus on celebrity-friendly pieces featuring interviews and light celebrity gossip. Robin Leach's Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous took viewers inside celebrities' homes, paving the way for current shows like MTV's Cribs and VH1's Fabulous Life. We're going to talk about this more later, but those types of shows, one of the elements of narcissism is stuff that's shown in these shows. It's actually an element of another disorder that's related to narcissism. What also does the TV spread about people's relationships to things? What do we call that? When people are obsessed with things.
Materialistic.
Right. Does the TV spread that kind of stuff, that you can make yourself happy with some new bed, or a new car, or a grotto, or more importantly, a 60,000 square foot mansion with a grotto and a bar? And LeBron James's house had, and the one in Cleveland, I don't know if he probably still owns it. I don't think anybody in their right mind would buy it. I think it was worth about $60 million. It still doesn't come close to what MC Hammer did. But anyway, he had a sports bar, a casino, a 2-story closet, basically a full gym with full court, and I think he had seating around part of it. And that was just one of his houses. And LeBron makes, with his endorsements, anybody know what he makes a year, roughly? It's outrageous. I've heard as high as $90 million a year he makes. I mean, Oprah was like the first multi-billionaire kind of like entertainment celebrity. LeBron James might, and I think Tiger has actually earned about $1 billion. But
No, he's over $1 billion.
But I don't. He doesn't have $1 billion because his wife probably took.
Took like 300 million.
Man, that must be nice. Can you imagine the check? It probably has to be this long. What do you do when you go into the bank? You go, yeah, I like a deposit. Like security. Anyway, but again, so one of the things it appears that they're not talking about that is maybe a mirroring effect is what we call affluenza or materialism, this desire to have a yacht and all this stuff, and that can drive people crazy because, or drive them into debt. If you go buy a house you can't afford, that's exactly what happened with this housing crisis. People were stating their income 4 and 5 times higher than it normally was, and these big mansions were going crazy. Anyway, but the point they're trying to make here is that in early days of cable, there was an attempt to put it this way: medias are celebrity products, the celebrities are in media products. So it's almost like if I'm McDonald's, I don't want to talk against beef, right? But so in the early days, there was an attempt by the studios and by the media companies, sort of hands off, that hey, it's not funny to make fun of addiction. For the longest time, you couldn't even talk publicly about addiction. I know this is hard for some of you to believe. In the 1980s, you couldn't even publicly discuss cancer without people thinking you were doing some faux pas that people didn't want to hear. Watch Terms of Endearment. But anyway, what they're trying to suggest here is that they were allowing this stuff to take place, and so they're talking about this focused on scandalous stories like Drew Barrymore's Metamorphosis, and they talk about Drew Barrymore, who supposedly has since gotten herself together. They also talk about Angelina Jolie, and I knew she was odd, but I didn't know to what level. But clearly, I mean, she had a white shirt with her husband's, future husband's name painted in her blood on a white shirt, and then when she married Billy Bob, and I knew this about Billy Bob, they wore a vial of each other's blood around their neck. And anybody who would marry Billy Bob Thornton, yeah, here's your free psychological analysis, because that's not normal. I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, if some of you find him attractive, then I'm sorry if I offended your sensibilities, but this is not an attractive person on any level. He is talented. Have you ever seen Sling Blade? I mean, that's a brilliant movie, you know. So I'm fixing to kill you with it. I love that movie. Anyway, so let me read this quickly about celebrities, their behavior themselves, the more modern celebrities. So one of the things that Drew is saying is that a couple things are converging. That media companies are competing more for attention. They do it by using sensational tabloid stuff. Here's the beautiful thing about celebrities. In order to do a story on a rock, what do I need to do resource-wise? In general, what do I need resource-wise? Where do you need to go if you're going to do a story about a rock? Is that cheap? It's probably the most expensive. I don't even know they have a real airport there. Can't just fly Delta. Where are you touching down in Baghdad? Watch out for the mortars. You know, so it's expensive, isn't it? And it's dangerous, and it's dirty, and you might not even get the story. Celebrities are like, they're already in LA. They're all over the town. Everybody knows, like TMZ knows exactly where these people are. And if you ever watch TMZ, and I'm not asking people, because some people don't like to admit this stuff. It's like people don't admit that they buy the National Enquirer, but they do. That, you know, do you see the celebrities play with TMZ, don't you? If you've ever watched this show, they're like, they sort of, oh, I'll answer a few questions, but I'm not going to answer that. One guy said something to Joe Pesci and almost got beat up, which you probably don't want to anger. If you guys know who I'm talking about. Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah, he's the one from Goodfellas that like he stabbed a guy in the back of the trunk and stuff. And he seems like he's got a bad temper. So, and I don't think he'd care if he went to jail for beating up a reporter. Kanye West has punched several cameramen, and in all due respect, to defend Kanye, they were up in his face at the airport. And what's it like when you get off a 5-hour flight? Do you want a paparazzi camera in your face? That's probably the last thing in the world. And they always catch, like, you'll see Britney, and she'll have these big, in her hair will be, because she's sleeping on the plane. She looks terrible, and she's got these big glasses on. And they're like, is she on drugs, or whatever it is? And they'll accost celebrities and sports figures and all kinds of stuff. And usually about 50% of the time the celebrities are down with it. Maybe they don't want to answer certain questions, but they'll go, oh yeah, blah, 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 or take my picture. Because you get in these things, and your agent will tell you that if you don't get your... I don't care if they see you like smoking a cigarette or, hanging out with somebody they don't like. The picture's worth a million whatever words or anything that you can do. And for a lot of celebrities, their mindset is there's no such thing as bad publicity. I would say that that's probably not the case. Tiger Woods' little stunt was very damaging, I think, to his career. And what happens is, remember Rush Limbaugh called the woman in the Georgetown student a slut because she supported birth control, and he lost a lot, like 40 of his sponsors. So there are ramifications for acting like a fool and saying stupid stuff. Remember when I showed you that Romney said he didn't care about poor people and stuff like that? These kind of things hurt. And I think with Charlie Sheen, did this hurt his career, his behavior? Not only that, he took his kids away in the middle of the night. I mean, that's a disgrace. And they showed it on TV. And we're going to watch some of his interview here in a minute. Okay. And what I think is somewhat tragic about Charlie is he thinks people are laughing with him. And I would venture to guess that most people are laughing at him. Or at the very minimum, laughing like, oh, I can't believe this guy. And remember he went on a tour? He came to New York. He got booed repeatedly. He didn't get booed in Cleveland because he wore an Indians jersey. And he was in the movie Major League. And so they loved him there. But everywhere else he was booed. And remember he went on these rants and stuff? Anyway, so here's some of the behavior on page 29 of some of the other celebrities. By her late teens, child star... Wait, let me start up from the top. When I met Nicole on Loveline in 2003, she impressed me as a sweet, lovely, sweet girl who had somehow been sidetracked down a very dangerous path. She admitted to smoking marijuana at age 13. She said she was injecting heroin by age 19. Only 19? Some people start at 15. Her bad girl reputation was solidified by a series of arrests and drug-related incidents. By the way, Angelina did heroin too. In 2003, she was arrested for DUI and was charged with possession of heroin while driving with a suspended license. For most people, if you get busted drinking and driving with heroin in the car and driving with a suspended license, are you ever going to get out of jail in the next decade? I'm serious. Do you know that possession of heroin alone in some states is a minimum 5-year sentence? That's not some game. And that wasn't the first time she was arrested. In late 2006, she was arrested for driving the wrong way down an LA freeway. So now she's taking other people's lives into account. And received her second DUI when she failed a field sobriety test, admitting to using marijuana and Vicodin before the incident. That's real good to go driving when you're all whacked out on Vicodin. In summer of 2007, a newly pregnant Nicole was sentenced to 4 days in jail while she was pregnant. She was released after serving just 82 minutes. I'm not sure why they arrested her then. Nicole has said since that her daughter Harlow, which she named it after Jean Harlow, who died when she was 26 from a kidney disorder, actually, has saved her life. The ability to connect deeply with her child while maintaining her relationship with Harlow's father is a positive sign for Nicole. It may be that motherhood has fulfilled her in such a way that she no longer seeks to numb and regulate her feelings with drugs. That's what we call the self-medicating effect. And many narcissists, because narcissism is a general... one of the reasons why narcissists behave the way they do is that they constantly feel uncomfortable. They constantly feel insecure. They constantly feel that everybody's after them. And they have to constantly prove themselves. And so, one of the ways that they deal with that discomfort is by numbing themselves with drug and alcohol. And with something like cocaine especially, why do you think a narcissistic person would be attracted to cocaine or speed? What's it make you feel like? Yeah, cocaine makes you feel like you're on top of the world, supposedly. Right? Like you're Leonardo DiCaprio. I'm the king of the world! Like you're in steerage, dude. And that's what happens when you're on cocaine. You think you're the king of the world, you come down and you realize you're sleeping with the rats. So, literally sometimes, unless you're rich. By her late teens, child star Lindsay, so here's Lindsay, and she's from Long Island. She just got off of probation. She supposedly was a homebody. I was like, no, that's home arrest. Anyway, her mom is a nut, supposedly. and parties with her. Her dad has been arrested several times. He was, last time I saw him, last time I heard about him, he was in the Hamptons trying to sell those those electronic cigarettes.
And he was on Celebrity Rehab.
Okay, was it? Well, at least he's trying to get, he probably didn't get better. It's like Hulk Hogan and his son. They just want a reality show. His son almost killed somebody. Anyway, they're a real prize family. Child star Lindsay, and she was, remember she was in The Parent Trap, wasn't it? She was in, she was in, I think a movie that probably spelled her doom was Mean Girls. Like something happened during that movie, or previous to that movie, where her behavior went off. And sometimes when you're in an ensemble cast like that, everybody's, like supposedly during Caddyshack, Rodney Dangerfield and all the other cast members were partying at all hours of the night. They said that when they interviewed Rodney Dangerfield, who was in his 60s at the time, the interview went like this. He came in, they said, look, Rodney, we want you to be in this film. He laid out a line of coke like that. He did it, and he said, let's go eat. And that was the end of the interview. I mean, that type of stuff goes on movie sets. The set of Cheers. Kelsey Grammer and Kirstie Alley, and probably a few of the other cast members, were all doing cocaine in the bathroom during the filming of the show. You can see it. Watch it next time. Fraser Crane will give his line, and he'll go into the bathroom. He comes back, and he's all excited. But just as she was poised to emerge as a bona fide movie star, reports of her out-of-control partying and substance abuse began to surface. Rumored to be a habitual cocaine user, Lindsay was likely to be seen out at Hollywood hotspots with her mother Dina, who parties as much as she did. As she was with Nicole in Paris, Lindsay's reputation as a wild girl soon threatened to overshadow her credibility as an actor and derail her career. Is her career derailed? It's dead. I mean, it's going to need resuscitation. Even Robert Downer Jr. didn't get this bad as far as his career is concerned. So he was still working when all this crazy stuff was going on. In 2006, she was arrested for DUI when she crashed her Mercedes convertible into a curb in Beverly Hills. Toxicology reports concluded she had almost twice the legal limit and traces of cocaine in her bloodstream. After repeatedly failing to show up for work on the set of Georgia Rule, was that one of those dramas on, what was that on, the WB or something like that? Oh, was it? In the summer of 2006, she received a memo from the producer, very much like Charlie Sheen received the thing. James Robinson calling her irresponsible, unprofessional, and blaming her all-night heavy partying for her so-called exhaustion, posted on the Smoking Guns website. The letter soon made headlines in the press, fueling the stories about Lindsay's out-of-control spiral, which was rumored to include bulimia, heavy drug use, and frequent hookups with others in her party circuit. I'll stop it there for now. And we will watch the Charlie Sheen interview. Now, Charlie Sheen went on a binge and had all this stuff happen. And the producer of 2.5 Men, whose name is Chuck Lorre, wrote a letter. It was supposed to be an internal memo. It was a bit of a joke. I think he maybe even said it out in front of an interview. He said, I eat right, and I exercise every day, and I don't cheat on my wife, and I'm trying to be a good father. And if Charlie Sheen lives longer than I am, I'm gonna be really pissed. Like he was suggesting that you are a degenerate sicko, Charlie, and I don't like your personal, I don't care what your professional behavior is, you are a sick bastard, and I don't want you around my kids, and you are some kind of degenerate deviant, and Charlie Sheen flew off the hook. And did anybody hear any of these radio rants that he went on? He was supposedly got accused of being anti-Semitic and calling Chuck Levine, Chaim Levine, or Chuck Lorre, Chaim Levine, and he tried to brush that away, but he kept saying stuff like, I'm bi-winning, and I'm going to sue you for $250 million, and I don't have a problem with drugs, and I'm on a drug called Charlie Sheen, it's not available in stores, and all this absurd nonsense, and it became sort of an entertainment thing, the way you, like, if two monkeys are fighting or something. I'm sure that's entertaining to some extent. Now, people get, the monkeys are going to get hurt. But again, I don't think anybody stopped and said, hey, this is hurting Charlie. I don't know if we're not going to get through all of this, so we'll start with this. Remember, we don't have class Thursday. Okay, so everybody have a good Easter and have a good, break there, and make sure to keep up with the reading, and then we'll finish this on next Tuesday, and we'll, again, we will have a written quiz next Tuesday. I just didn't want to do one today because your test was due today, and that will account for your final exam grade. And what I'll do is I'll probably have like your worst quiz, I'll drop it, or something like that, so it still won't harm your grade. And it'll add for your participation grade as well, so that'll help you as well. So don't sweat it. Hopefully, if the second tests are as good as the first test, you guys have nothing really to worry about. I was very impressed with how everybody did well on the first test. Okay, so keep up the good work. But anyway, let's watch this, and you'll see the elements of narcissism. Write down things you see that Charlie is doing that's out of the ordinary, or stuff that's deviant, or also narcissistic statements like, I'm the greatest in the world, or I'm better than everybody else, or I'm entitled to do things that other people can't do. So here we go. Here's Charlie Sheen at his finest. And what's interesting...
The tabloid headlines, we've never heard as...
What's interesting, this stuff was going on at the same time that Amy Winehouse died. And then Whitney Houston died a little bit after that. So, they used to have this thing where they would put a list of celebrities who are most likely to die. Keith Richards was on the... I think he's still on the top of the list. Because after Morrison and Hendrix and all that, and Janis Joplin died. But Charlie's got to be on the list of somebody's list of people that are